Thank you for joining the Innovation World Young Collaborators podcast series. My name is Maxwell Miller, and I am from the United States. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Jennifer George. She is a fashion and jewelry designer and the mastermind behind the current Rube Goldberg Institute. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today. Is there anything else we should know about you?
You kind of summed it all up in one quick sentence. Yeah, you pegged me. I was a fashion designer, a jewelry designer. I've done interior design work, and I run the Rube Goldberg Institute, which is a not-for-profit organization. We focus on STEM and art education, otherwise known as STEAM. And we kind of try to spread the message of how important it is to learn through doing, hands-on problem solving. And I got involved with this purely by accident because my grandfather was Rube Goldberg. So many people don't realize that he was a real person, but indeed he was my Papa Rube.
It's very cool. Before working with the Rube Goldberg Institute, you had a successful career in fashion and jewelry design. How did you first get into that industry?
Well, I was probably, how old are you, Max?
I'm 12,
Yeah, and what grade? I don't know if you were in traditional school or not, but what grade theoretically are you
about
in?
7th.
Well, I was in fifth grade when I decided I wanted to be a fashion designer, and at the time I would only really make clothes for my Barbie doll, and I got into it mostly because I was kind of chubby, to say the least, as a kid, and nothing fit me right or the way I wanted it to. And there was nothing to choose from if you were a kid at my age in those times. And so I really did notice clothing and body types, and it spoke to me then. And even as I grew up and I became a teenager and went from a chubby little girl to a very thin young woman, I was still interested in fashion. So that was what I pursued.
It's very cool. I love how fashion has kind of shaped how you view the world, and I love how, because of who you were as a child, you got into fashion and it kind of shaped your entire life. And I doubt you would be as involved with the Rube Goldberg Institute as you are now if it wasn't for that. Um, and do you see any similarities between designing jewelry and building creative problem solving projects like is done with the Rube Goldberg Institute?
Well, it's funny because, when I started in fashion, I didn't work for anyone. I started my own business right out of the box. I actually started it in my dorm room at college and just kept going. And, when you are running a fashion, a collection that, you have to design, uh, manufacture, produce, and ship your clothing, and it grows. I mean, being a fashion designer is kind of the least of it. You're actually running a business, and you're trying to figure out how does this work. Um, and almost every industry or everything you're passionate about, there's something you have to figure out. And what's the first step? What's the second step? What's the third step? And what does it mean when it comes to its logical conclusion? So, starting the Rube Goldberg Institute was its own, kind of massive endeavor, and I had big dreams for it and how we were going to reach kids all around the world, including you, Max. And so the business part really helped me when I was trying to organize my thoughts about how to run a not-for-profit. So that's the first thing. But in terms of design, um, a lot of what happens in an organization, especially like ours, there's a lot of marketing materials, imagery, your logos, the fonts you use, the colors that you use that are consistent month after month, year after year. that message the work you do. So yes, having a design background really helped me. It gave me an incredible jump start in trying to figure how I was gonna launch and try to run an organization that I hope would last well beyond my years on this planet and can live on so that Max, your grandchildren, can compete in a Rube Goldberg machine contest.
I love your view on this whole matter. Um, and did your grandfather's creativity influence your design work even before you joined the institute? Maybe with your fashion and jewelry?
Well, it's funny. So my fashion came first, the clothing aspects of what I designed. And, when you're from a design perspective, if you look at my grandfather's work, and he was an artist, he was a cartoonist. He never actually built the machines that he's known for and that we uh, promote creating in the Institute. He was a cartoonist and he drew them. And if you look at his cartoons, and there are many, many, many to look at in the gallery on our website, which is rubegoldberg.org, uh, you'll see that there's a certain balance to them. There's the negative and positive space between the black and the white and everything in between, the hatching and grid marks and everything that he would do to create shadows and texture and pattern in a drawing. And there's a lot of asymmetry to it and there's a lot of balance to it. And the way aesthetically he looks at things, I see in my design work. I mean, even before I was involved in the in really promoting his legacy. Um, but when it comes to jewelry, and especially the jewelry that I make, which is composite jewelry, so I take random elements, the things that float to the back of a woman's jewelry box, everything from her father's cufflinks to her grandmother's beads to lockets and charms and dog tags and you know, everything in between. It could be tape measures and coins. I try to assemble those elements in a cohesive way that almost looks like it washed ashore together. So in that respect, I use random things to create a cohesive design piece, usually a necklace. And it's kind of similar to all the random elements that go into a Rube Goldberg machine. It's just one is giant, and one typically is pretty small and wraps around the neck.
I can really see the similarities there between the complex machines that your grandfather made in his designs, and between how jewelry like that would look. Um,
If you'd like to check out my jewelry or my scarves or clothing, check it out at my website, which is jennifergeorge-nyc.com.
what was the biggest challenge in building your own career separate from the Rube Goldberg name before the Institute?
Um, Gosh, you know, it's the same challenge that anyone has when they are putting a business together. I wasn't at a loss for ideas. That that was not the challenge. The challenge was how do you grow and stay afloat and keep going and manage the business aspect of the business. And I'm very cautious, and I like to know that all my I's are dotted and my T's are crossed, and I'm, I'm I'm good like that. But when you start growing at a clip and things are going very fast, you have to be very careful. So that was really the biggest challenge. How do you scale up? And luckily, I have a lot of really smart people around me, and they help. So I'm lucky.
Do you think that jewelry you made and or the fashion that you have developed in your fashion design work and engineering are more connected than people would think?
Absolutely, it's actually there are a lot of similarities. I don't know if you have ever made clothing, Max, but when you do, you create almost a flat, it's a flat paper pattern of the body type or size that you are designing for. That basic pattern is called a sloper. That sloper changes from designer to designer. Like you might say, oh my God, this designer's clothing fits me really well in a size 8, and this designer's clothing doesn't fit me at all in a size 8. And that's because they're working from two different basic slopers. And then once you have the sloper, you can do all kinds of things. Do I want something that's whimsical or easy or big fitted or fitted? And and then you have to take that pattern and fit it most economically into a single piece of fabric, which is usually anywhere from 45 inches to 60 inches wide. So, and you want to save as much fabric as possible. And it's like puzzle pieces. So it's very graphic, it's very visual, it involves math and engineering. Now, in the jewelry, it's funny because I did a crazy. It's almost a costume piece. It's not a really wearable piece of jewelry for the only female founding member of Burning Man, and it was in the Burning Man exhibit at the Smithsonian. And when I was commissioned to make this piece, when you go to Burning Man, which I've never been to, you are given tokens and kind of talismans and all kinds of trinkets that commemorate that year and or that artist. So I was working with dozens and dozens of elements, and I wanted to use as many as possible. And some of them are so heavy, Max, that if you put them on a necklace, you'd fall over. I mean, that's how heavy they are. So I had to figure out how can I make this giant, almost bib of a necklace and keep it on this woman's shoulders. So I took chains and hung it down the back with pendants at the bottom that were the heaviest pendants are in the back, so that when it sits on the shoulder, it's really resting on your shoulder uh, bones, really, so that it's not pulling you to the front or pulling you to the back. It's balanced. So, that I figured out the problem and a solution to the problem, and that actually involved some engineering type thinking.
That's very cool. I'm sure that would have been a little bit uncomfortable to wear with all that weight.
Actually, it wasn't, because if it's weighted correctly on your shoulders, you won't really feel it because your shoulders can take it. If it were hanging forward, it would, or hanging backwards, choking, it would not be good. But if it's really weighted correctly, it will sit right there.
That's very cool. How important would you say experimentation in both fashion and invention is?
Well, I mean, every time I make something, and again, mostly these days I make jewelry, and uh, I leave something. I'll do a first pass, and then I'll leave it on a counter, and I'll keep looking at it and looking at things. I want to move things. It's not quite right. It's not speaking to me perfectly, and so I will change it, over and over and over again until it stops winking at me. And when it stops winking at me, I know it's done. Now that is an aesthetic choice. When you get into does it work or does it not work, which is what Rube Goldberg machine builders grapple with, because so much of the time you might have a 20-step machine and the first 7 steps are working perfectly and then the 8th step doesn't, and that involves iteration, reiteration, and it's winking at you in its own way on that 8th step, and you got to fix that. And if you can kind of keep at it so that those points of those sort of pain points where they don't work, you can fix it, suddenly you have a machine that can work perfectly and work perfectly every time.
Have you ever designed something inspired directly by Rube Goldberg's art or humor?
I can't say that I have. It's I feel his influence just in my DNA, and it has nothing to do with anything about Rube himself, but how I kind of will look at something and how I approach things aesthetically. I feel him in me, but no, I've never designed anything saying, "Oh my God, I'm going to do this. This is so rude." You know, it just doesn't occur to me. And I'm really bad at building Rube Goldberg machines. Just so you know.
And what lessons would you say from the fashion industry help you later when working with the Institute?
What lessons did I learn? Pretty much that you learn more from your failures than you do from your success, and that uh, you know I closed my business after many years of design work, and the landscape was changing. I was changing, and was it is it a failure that you had to close? Some people might assume it was. I don't look at it as a failure. I look at it as, it was one chapter, one door was closing and another one was opening. Um, and I think that's kind of, it prepared me well to kind of start working uh, towards having this robust, global organization.
Um, do you encourage students to think artistically as well as technically in the Institute? Do you encourage people to think about how it will look and also how it will work?
We weight it equally when we're judging. So we are we find storytelling, artistry, humor, creativity in like use a random everyday object in a way that we've never seen or that we couldn't imagine. So we are always pushing the limits in that direction. Um, Art and design thinking need to go hand in hand, and out of the box thinking and creativity, and you know think outside the box. That's really what it's about. And the funnier your machine is, the more you can impress us and make us laugh. I mean, if you can add the humor to it, you'll nail it always.
That's very cool. Um, what made you decide to become more involved in preserving and expanding your grandfather's legacy?
Well, I had no intention ever of doing what I'm doing. I mean, this was, like I said, I joke that it was an accident of birth, but when my father died, he had signed a deal to do the quintessential coffee table book on my grandfather, and it fell into my lap to complete the project. Uh, and I didn't really know that much about my grandfather. I mean, he was my Papa Rube. His work hung on our walls. Um, I have vivid memories of him. He taught me how to draw. He taught me how to make paper balloons. He loved to eat bowls of whipped cream without anything on it. And he was a character, and he was a great, wonderful grandfather. But beyond that, I knew the dictionary definition just like many other people do, and so suddenly I had to get my feet wet, and I had to actually pay attention. I had to go to the competitions, and I had to do my research. And 7 years later, we had a book called The Art of Rube Goldberg, and I was in hook, line, and sinker, and that was how it happened. So it was really, and my grandfather always uh, not my grandfather, my father, who started the institute, always wanted me to get involved, and I really did not want to. So literally, he got his wish from the grave.
And earlier you said that you haven't made um, anything based off your grandfather directly, but if you were to, What would you think that something based on Rube's legacy might look like, or based off Rube Goldberg himself?
Well, I always people will say to me like, "Where do you want to be like in 10 years with Rube?" And and that was 15 years ago when someone asked me that. So clearly, I'm not on the right time schedule. However, I 10 years from now, I would love to be waiting on line for the Rube Goldberg roller coaster because I think that would be very cool. But if I were going to make something, a piece of jewelry or a piece of clothing, it would be maybe a pair of pants that turns into a dress, that turns into a skirt, that turns into a top. I mean, something, highly versatile and really engineered in a creatively outrageous way.
It's very cool. And that roller coaster yeah, is very interesting. And I think a roller coaster that had all of his machines in it would be cool. But that's a topic for another day. Um,
That is a topic for another day, exactly.
is there something interesting you can share with us about your grandfather that most people wouldn't already know or don't know?
Well, I already told you specific things that he taught me. But one of the things that when I zoom into classrooms and I meet groups of kids, and I try to kind of give them a gift that my grandfather gave me, uh, he taught me how to shake hands. And I know that sounds kind of corny, and I kind of lost the habit of shaking hands during COVID, obviously. But now that we're done with COVID, I think it's time to resume the tradition. And he said, when you meet someone, look them in the eye, give them a firm, hard handshake, no limp fish, he always said, and let them know that they're meeting someone. And it really does go a long way. When you meet someone who gives you a good handshake, looks you in the eye, and can, say nice to meet you, and it makes an impression. It makes a good impression. So if you remember nothing else from Rube Goldberg, try to remember that.
What would you say is the most creative thing you've seen someone make out of ordinary materials or materials you would never think to expect?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. We see so many crazy transfers of energy that stick with us from year to year. I'll never forget one year, because every year we have a challenge, and every machine at every age level has to has to accomplish that challenge. So this particular year was erase a chalkboard, and I'll never forget this one team, and they had a chalkboard. Now think about this, and they had the eraser on one side, and there was all kinds of stuff written on the chalkboard, and they had a disembodied hand attached to it, and there was a whole theme and a thing about the machine, and then it had a magnet on the back side, so that at the end there was a motor that it flipped the switch of the motor, and the motor from behind was moving all around it was moving in a circular pattern, but there was a magnet on the motor, and the magnet went through the chalkboard, and the disembodied hand was rotating and erasing the chalkboard. So it was one of the best steps I've ever seen. You just wouldn't expect it. And every year we always see something that blows us away. And there's still time to compete if you want to. If you're listening to this, I don't know when this is airing, but if I think sometime next month, sometime in July, mid-July, I think, any of the online Rube Goldberg machines for this year have to be submitted. All the info is on our website, like I said, rubegoldberg.org, and you can build a machine, and you can build it in your kitchen or in your backyard or down your stairs or whatever, your basement, whatever you want, wherever you want to build it, and record it and send it in, and we have cool prizes. And you never know. All you need is a great pile of junk and a great imagination, and you can like win top honors at our contests.
That's very cool. And a disembodied hand. be a little off to see, especially if we're keeping fake blood, but it's a very creative idea. And would you say you're drawn to like a more elegant simplicity or more complex, more playful designs in in like when you're looking at these?
You mean when I'm looking at kids' submissions, or when I'm
Yes,
looking at my where I'm thinking about my own work?
both.
An elegant design in a Rube Goldberg machine where you can actually see the transfers of energy clearly, where a transfer of energy goes slowly so it builds anticipation but is visual, like when, you know, colorful liquid fills a beaker and you can see it filling up. There's anticipation. And there's something incredibly beautiful and very appealing and entertaining about seeing a machine that works in an elegant way. Um, there's moments for chaos though, and we had so this year's task is open. This year's challenge is open a box, be any box. We had shoe boxes, we had coffins, we had mailboxes that were Harry Potter themed. We had a jewelry heist, so it was a big, it was like the Louvre. It was a jewelry heist case that opened. We even have Pandora's box represented. So you can use your creativity in any which way. And some of these boxes that open, I mean, zombies would jump out, or crazy confetti and drones would fly out of them. So, there is a moment for, let's say goodbye to the elegance and really do something that wows, the viewer. When it comes to my own work, I'm kind of 50-50. I love like a lot of visual information against a very simple backdrop. So, like, I do the crazy necklaces, but then I have a very simple dress that I like to pair with it. That's, I call it a necklace dress. So it's just a simple column of color. But then I'll also do crazy scarves like this and layer it with jewelry. And I'm, I don't know. I don't ascribe to any one thing. If I like it, I like it.
Has there been any machines that you've seen in your time that just look like they shouldn't work or look like magic? Maybe something like looking like it teleports from one area to another?
Oh, there are definitely times that machines, like, you don't know how they did it. And it's, but to be fair, those are usually machines that are college or adults, created. And they're using things like Arduino and different technical aspects that kind of make it all look like magic. Now those are kind of like the smoke and mirrors behind the scenes of a working Rube Goldberg machine. But most of the time, we really are happiest when we understand how the transfer of energy happened. And I know that there's probably a thousand different transfers of energy going on in my phone, but it's not a Rube Goldberg machine at all. So the whole point of a Rube Goldberg machine is, can you see it? Is it ridiculous? And in the end, does it work? Yes. And so just actually looking at something and you can understand how it works is a nostalgic thing that especially people my age are and little kids, we love to see how one thing leads to another, and it helps with critical thinking.
To finish off, is there anything else you would like to say? Maybe about the Rube Goldberg Institute or your previous work in fashion design or your jewelry?
Well, Max, first off, I want to thank you for interviewing me today. This was a real pleasure. Um, and what I hope is, if any of you are kind of intrigued by our contests, we have contests of all kind, and they go all year round. Um, There's you can still enter the online contest and build like an IRL in real life machine and submit it. We also have the cartoon contest, and so if you can pick out whatever thing is vexing you, like you have to clean the kitty litter, or you have to take out the trash, or you have to feed your dog, send us your Rube Goldberg machine or idea of how to solve that problem in the silliest, craziest, most overly complicated way possible. I just take a picture of your drawing and have send it in. And again, it's that contest ends mid-August. Again, everything is on our website, rubegoldberg.org. And then next year's contest, we just announced next year's challenge, and it is to flip a switch. So Max, I see that you have all those switches in your bedroom. Maybe we'll see something from you that flips a switch.
Well, I think that's it. Thank you for joining us on the Innovation World Young Collaborative podcast series. This was Maxwell, signing off.